Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes officially kicking off spring practice Monday morning. And for the Miami Hurricane fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of years, y'all know I get really fired up around this time because we talk so much about these guys in the winter months. We talk so much about, the commitments that Miami has landed over the last couple of months. This is the first chance we get to kind of hear what they look like joining this Miami Hurricanes program. And for me specifically, in this spring practice window for Miami, there are a ton of really intriguing storylines. And it starts with, the new faces, right? You got a brand new defensive coaching staff. You got a ton of talent coming into this program through the transfer portal. You also have some freshmen that we're really excited about. To me, what I think the biggest storyline for the Miami Hurricanes is, hey, hearing what these year two guys look like. I'm talking about Jordan Lyle. I'm talking about JoJo Trader, Elijah Lofton, Justin Scott, OJ Frederic. Where I look at this Miami Hurricanes team, that is where the ceiling exists for Miami. If you get Jordan Lyle as one of the best running backs in the country, which I do not think is that crazy to talk about going into 2025, if you get JoJo Trader emerging as a legitimate wide receiver one, Elijah Lofton, top tight end in the ACC, Justin Scott dominating like the 5-star we think he is, that is where this Miami team goes from really, really good in 2025 to potentially great. And that's probably the storylines that I'm most excited to follow as spring practice goes on. Want to talk about some early names that are, kind of popping for this Miami Hurricanes team. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it's going to be so fun talking this program the next couple of weeks. Not only spring practice, but what this team is doing on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys. There are not a ton of fan bases that rock with the fellas in the winter and spring months. The Miami fans consistently do so, and we appreciate that more than y'all know. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I want to start with one of the players I'm most excited about, and you're already hearing some positive feedback. That's Jordan Lyle. What fascinates me about Jordan Lyle is he was extremely impressive as a true freshman. Limited sample size because you had a guy like Damian Martinez getting the lion's share of the workload. When we saw Jordan Lyle on the football field, it was immediate flash. And what excites me the most about Jordan Lyle is, look, this kid was a summer enrollee. He was not even on campus 12 months ago for the Miami Hurricanes. Comes in the summer, missing winter workouts, missing spring practice, and immediately cements himself as a difference maker for this Miami Hurricanes team. Now, who's quote unquote running back one probably does not matter that much because I see Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle getting a lot of work in 2025. But the fascinating storyline for me here is this is going to be one of the best. If Miami wants to run the football, they will be able to. Even last year, they were averaging well over 5.5 yards per carry. They had a top 5 rushing attack in the country in terms of yards per carry. This didn't run the football that much because he had the best quarterback in the country. I think Miami's going to look to run the football. And with the offensive line that we know they have, with the 2 running backs they got back there, this could be a very, very good rushing attack in 2025. Jordan Lyle putting on a little bit of weight, closer to 200 pounds going into year 2. That fires me up because I think Jordan Lyle could be one of the best running backs in all of college football. Number 2 storyline, and probably the biggest storyline in terms of spring practice for Miami on the offensive side of the football is, what do these pass catchers look like? And we're already hearing some good things from the guys that we wanted to hear good things from. JoJo Trader, it starts with, right? JoJo Trader, he has the chance to be the wide receiver one in this offense, and he's going to have a ton of opportunity to do so because it's kind of a thin wide receiver room and a young wide receiver room. What fires me up the most is you're really going to get a feel for how good JoJo Trader is because it ain't like 12 months ago where Miami just didn't have any defensive backs. This defensive back room is absolutely loaded, and it's iron sharpening iron. It's some talented wide receivers who are a little bit young going up against some really, really good defensive backs that Miami brought in through the transfer portal. Last year we just heard about the wide receivers cooking the defensive backs, and we weren't really sure what to take away. And it turns out it was the defensive backs weren't all that good. That passing attack was really good. This year, I think the development for some of these young wide receivers is only going to be helped by bringing in a ton of really good defensive backs in the transfer portal. Malachi Tony, number 2. This is a huge storyline. This is a kid that was a reclassified kid. He's supposed to be going into his senior year of high school. He's supposed to still be a junior in high school right now. and he's practicing with the Miami Hurricanes. And you're already hearing two really good things. One, he's a polished route runner, and two, he's a really smooth mover that looks physically developed enough. Those are the two things you wanted to hear. Why is this such a big storyline for Miami? Is one, you're just trying to replace the production that you had from Xavier Restrepo last year at that slot wide receiver spot. But just as importantly, who are Carson Beck's favorite wide receivers to throw the football to? Going back at his time at Georgia, slot wide receivers and the tight ends. Can Malachi Tony, be that guy for Miami in the slot? It is sounding like he certainly could be early on in spring. And I think the other storyline is, look, we know Elijah Lofton is awesome. Elijah Lofton didn't get the opportunity I think we all thought he was going to get. That turns out because Elijah Royal was just one of the best tight ends in all of college football. It would not surprise me in the slightest if we're talking about Elijah Lofton 8 months from now at the end of 2025. If we're talking about Elijah Lofton being a first-team All-ACC guy and one of the best tight ends in the country, would not surprise me at all. And if you get some really quick development from Elijah Lofton, from Malachi Tony, which you're already starting to hear during the early portions of spring practice, that's huge. Because if you give Carson Beck a run game and you give him some slot wide receivers and tight ends to get the football to, that's all you need from Carson Beck. That's how you get the version of Carson Beck that we saw in 2023, of which was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion. Some really intriguing storylines from the pass catcher department, and we'll see. I mean, I think it's really important for Miami to be honest in their evaluation and say, are we good enough here, or do we need to go to the spring portal and grab one more wide receiver? We're going to find out over the next couple of weeks. Offensive line, I don't have any huge question marks, and it's going to be hard to evaluate until they put on the pads. So we'll kind of hold off on the offensive line. My take is it's going to be really good. Going to the defensive side of the football, my biggest storyline here, and again, these are really the only storylines you can take this early on, is the defensive line sounds to be looking the part. And I think you want to start with Justin Scott, who another example of Jordan Lyle was Justin Scott did not get on campus to Miami until the summer. Hey, this is the first year Justin Scott got a full, winter conditioning window with this Miami Hurricanes team. And from what you're hearing, what he looks like in the first spring practice, I mean, he looks like an all-ACC defender. That should fire up a lot of Miami fans, because you look at Justin Scott, if he can be that 5-star that we know he is, huge storyline for Miami. Y'all know how I feel about Ahmad Moten. I think David Blay was a great addition. Artavius Jones, I don't know if y'all have been seeing the weight room numbers he's putting up. He looks the part as well. I think the biggest storyline for me reading some of these spring practice notes is the defensive line looks like a legitimate, dominant Power 4 defensive line. Why is this such a big storyline? Go look at the past national champions. Go back to Georgia in 2021, Georgia in 2022, Michigan in 2023, Ohio State in 2024. What do all those national champs have in common? Elite, elite, elite defensive lines. I don't think it's crazy to talk about Miami like this. Akeem Mesidor working out on the edge. Hayden Lowe, from what I'm hearing about Hayden Lowe, he looks like a guy that's going to contribute as a true freshman. The big storyline for me is the year two guys. Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, Marquise Lightfoot potentially, Cole McConaughey, Booker Pickett. What are these guys looking like? From what you're hearing about Justin Scott, what you're hearing from a guy like Hayden Lowe as a true freshman, you're hearing all the things you want to hear. Number 4, athleticism at linebacker. I put athletic at linebacker as the storyline, and that to me excites me. Wesley was saying we know, hey, he's been steady Eddie for Miami. The guy that you're hearing the most buzz around is Kellen Wiley. Kellen Wiley, and from the videos that I saw of what he looks like, he looks the part. And we talk about this all the time. Miami just didn't have the athletes at linebacker. They couldn't play in space well enough. Whether it's Bobby Pruitt, whether it's Kellen Wiley, whether it's a guy like a Darius Hayes or Popo, it's a more athletic unit. And guess what excites me the most is Corey Heatherman. He's a linebacker guy. He's going to be working with this unit the most. He's the defensive coordinator. He's also going to be working with them linebackers. What does the development look like from these young linebackers? And can we get more athletic at the position? Last storyline, and this is probably the biggest storyline on defense, right? What does the puzzle look like in the secondary? You're so loaded at cornerback. And the one thing that, if there was one, concern you have coming out of this first spring practice, is that Zaquan Patterson's dealing with an injury. That just why that is I wouldn't say frustrating because it ain't Zaquan Patterson's fault. Why that hurts Miami is that was a player you really wanted to get a feel of what he was going into year two. Because that's really the only from a personnel standpoint, the only question mark I have for Miami is, do we have good enough safeties? You're bringing Zachariah Poyser. I know he's good. We saw plenty of that film from Jacksonville State telling us he's a really good football player. Who's the other safety? Right now, it's not a proven commodity. You look at the cornerbacks. I mean, Charles Brantley, OJ Frederick, Xavier Lucas, Emmanuel Carnley, Ethan O'Connor. That's five guys that we feel very confident about. The safety position, you probably have one. That's Zachariah Poyser. Again, that's not saying Zaquan Patterson can't be that guy going into year two, but he's not a guy that we know is good yet. Him dealing with the injury is probably going to prevent Miami from really getting a feel for what that safety room is going to look like. That's a position that I could see Miami trying to address in that spring transfer portal window. And you bring in a veteran safety that's played a decent amount of football, and say Zaquan Patterson beats him out in fall camp. Well, guess what? Then you know Zaquan Patterson's a really good football player going into year two. The way I look at it, Miami put together a really good team in 2024, right? They won 10 football games. The biggest thing they missed on was you kind of knew the defensive backs were a problem and you didn't fix it in the spring transfer portal window. If you have a problem at safety and you're Mario Cristobal, you got to make sure you go out and fix it. I think some really positive developments, especially when it comes to what the defensive line is looking like and what these young pass catchers are looking like going into 2025. We'll see how it continues out in spring ball, and it's obviously going to ramp up as we get the pads on and we get into that spring game. Some really good early returns on guys like Malachi Tony and guys like JoJo Trader and Elijah Lofton. That's about as good as you wanted from this first spring practice. We'll continue to break it down as it plays out over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.